Seven Samurai is widely considered to be one of the greatest films of all time. It is directed by a man widely considered to be one of the greatest directors of all time, and it stars two of Japan's greatest actors of all time. It's a pretty big movie on episode 50 of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Yes, episode 50 of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. I'm, of course, joined by my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney. Shane, episode 50, how you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. A little bit of a landmark episode for ourselves. Half a century of episodes. So, yeah, it's nice. I think it's a pretty legendary film to kind of celebrate that little landmark here on the podcast.
Yeah, big time. As far as my setup goes, by the way, I'm actually in the process, like literally today, of building an entire new setup behind me. So I've just covered it all up in cardboard because you can all figure it out next week.
I can see
Yeah,
all
you
the
can see it next
IKEA.
week.
I can see all the IKEA boxes behind you.
Yeah.
viewers
That's all
probably
you're
can't
gonna
see
see
that,
this
but
week, and then next week, boom, brand new setup. So that'll be exciting. But yeah. Speaking of changes, we were just talking there. I think going forward with the podcast after this week's episode, Shane was saying, "Do you want to go ahead there first?" And then I
Yeah, well,
actually have another suggestion as well.
first one would be that instead of doing a scene by scene breakdown, which you've been doing on the podcast, maybe just kind of cherry picking a few key scenes, and then maybe a few, like, maybe there's a performance or two that you really want to mention, or particular like scene, like a few particular scenes that you want to mention, instead of kind of doing a scene by scene breakdown where maybe not much of significance happens, because maybe just brevity might be the best option we have going forward when it comes to just maybe not having to make people listen to like hour-long episodes of films.
Yeah. And then on top of that as well, because of how long the episodes can be sometimes, I do feel like the what we've watched recently segment does kind of get lost, and a lot of people do tend to miss that segment. So I was thinking going forward, I may actually clip that section at the end of whenever we do it, and as well as include it in the podcast, upload it separately with maybe clips of the movies and stuff that we're talking about, and kind of make that its own sort of mini series as well, because it is literally a staple of the podcast that some of you may not know about. Because let's face it, if we're going like an hour and 20 minutes talking about a movie, I can understand if you're not hanging around for the last 10.
Yeah, like I put it in YouTube.
I feel like that segment does get missed.
I do put it in YouTube, like make sure it gets its own little section, but obviously, yeah, like you said, people might not necessarily use those timestamps. So if you've kind of just listened to the breakdown of the episode, or just even the highlights at the start of the film where we kind of give our spoiler-free reviews, I might not actually check that stuff out. So that's a good idea, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll do it from this episode, because I myself have watched a bunch of movies since our last recording. Yeah, but in the meantime, yeah, Seven Samurai, it's not my first time seeing it. It is, of course, the podcast debut of Akira Kurosawa. For me, one of the best directors of all time. It stars Toshiro Mifune, who, for me, is probably the best of Kurosawa's kind of key actors. Obviously, Mifune's done plenty besides Kurosawa, but he's one of the most synonymous with Kurosawa. And his character Kikuchiyo in this is one of my favorite Kurosawa characters ever. As well, obviously, you've Takashi Shimura, who is very good in this, but I think if you want to watch Takashi Shimura at the peak of his powers, you need to watch Ikiru, a different Kurosawa film about a man who has spent his whole life working 9 to 5 for the government, and then realizes he's terminally ill, and he realizes that maybe he hasn't done enough with his life. So that's a very good film as well, and that one for me is probably my favorite of Shimura's characters. But Kikuchiyo, Mifune's got so many good characters, but Kikuchiyo may be my favorite. This, however, is Shane's first time seeing Seven Samurai. Shane, and a spoiler for review, what you reckon? Is Seven Samurai any use?
It's quite a lot of use, I'd say. Yeah, it's a brilliant film. I was going to give a spoiler or star rating there. I'll give it at the very end, but yeah, the 3.5 hour runtime, I only kind of felt that in little short spaces, but then it would drag me right back in. So it's a couple of points where maybe I think it was kind of getting slightly repetitive, but then something would happen and I'd be right back in there. So it wasn't really a big issue. I do love a long film. Like I'm not one of these people who needs kind of a very short film to kind of watch. So I actually, Kurosawa was someone I haven't seen enough of, to be honest. I've only seen, I think, Rashomon in full. I'd seen parts of this, but I hadn't seen it in full. I do love Rashomon, to be honest. I absolutely love Rashomon. So I do need to make it a point to watch more Kurosawa stuff this year. But yeah, I mean, this is, like I said, as far as landmark episodes of the podcast go, you really can't go wrong with Seven Samurai. It's a phenomenal film.
Yeah, because I also made Seven Samurai my 1000th film on Letterboxd as well. That was the first time I watched it, which is a couple of years ago. And I think I did it perfectly for any of you who hasn't seen Seven Samurai before, which is I got the evening off work, I ordered a kebab, I got a 6-pack of beers, I sat down at like 7 o'clock and I watched Seven Samurai, and it was bliss. It's like the best way to consume that movie for me. It was incredible. But yeah, this time round, I maintain everything that I said the first time I saw it. I would genuinely put it up there for me with Brief Encounter. This is obviously going to just give away my star rating, but who cares? Star ratings. But I would just genuinely put this up there for me with Brief Encounter for one of the best movies we will probably ever cover on the podcast, in my opinion. Absolutely integral piece of cinema, and it's so funny because it inspired the Magnificent Seven. Have you seen the first Magnificent Seven?
Never seen any Magnificent Seven, no.
Yeah, it's
but
mid.
No, I haven't seen
Mid.
any.
Hot take: the OG Magnificent Seven.
I know they remade it a few years ago with Antoine Fuqua.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Chris Pratt. I haven't seen that now either.
No, and I know Takeshi Miike also remade Seven Samurai. He gave it a different name maybe 10 years ago as well. Yeah. But yeah, not a huge fan of Magnificent Seven. I had seen Seven Samurai prior, so it's just, yeah, it didn't feel like a homage. It felt like, oh, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Let me just copy your homework and change it a little.
That's
yeah, I reckon we get on into Seven Samurai, and yeah, at the end we will get into what we watched recently. But in maybe a couple of days' time, I'll then also upload that as a separate video. So come back and watch that as well, please, because it'll have visuals. So the film opens, and we learn that these bandits, about 400 years ago, after all the various wars involving samurai across Japan, have decided they're gonna raid a village that they've already raided before. They're gonna come back. They've literally left the place in famine, so they're gonna wait until they harvest their crops again. They're gonna come back and they're gonna raid the place. Silly enough, they do say this out loud though, because one villager who's hiding in the bushes does overhear this, and he legs it into the village and tells them. And the village elder decides that the best course of action is to get some samurai. Now, as far as the villagers go, I reckon there's maybe 4 other than the elder himself who are worth name dropping now, just because they will be key characters throughout the film. Rikichi, not the father of the Usos, he is the one who's very much heavily pushing for samurai protection, because when it was overheard that these guys are coming, everyone was like, oh my god, who's going to protect us? God won't protect us, our government won't protect us, who's going to protect us? And his bright idea was samurai, but obviously he went to the village elder first. Manzo, on the other hand, is a slightly older villager who is totally against the idea of samurai, because, yeah, it's safe to say that these samurai, some of them were good and some of them were not so good, and some of them maybe had their way with certain villages and villagers as they were passing through, and it's never explicitly explained, but it's safe to assume that Manzo at some point in his life encountered those types of samurai. So he is wholeheartedly against the idea of samurai. He wants to go and bargain with the bandits. His daughter Shino is also worth naming for now, but although she's not a character till later. And the other villager who isn't huge to the narrative, but is worth acknowledging is Yohei, just because he's the most cowardly little old man ever, and he does have a bit of an arc. God love him. So yeah, just gonna name drop Yohei because he does get his moment, and good for him. Anyway, so a handful of these villagers go into the village to go and find samurai. This village, obviously, because they're in a famine, they're broke as fuck. They cannot pay samurai. So the village elder said the best course of action is to find hungry samurai, because although we have no money, we've plenty of land, and once we start harvesting, we can then feed them, and that will be their pay. It'll be an unpaid job, but they can eat as much as they want whilst they're here. So they go off, and the first guy who they ask gives a pretty emphatic no.
So yeah, we come across a samurai called Kanbei Shimada, and he's quite the impressive samurai. I think he starts to like some of the villagers are like he might actually be someone who we can actually get a lot of help from. So they follow him and ask him to teach them, and then he seems to hint that he knows Kikuchiyo. Or at least he seems to, there's like a flicker of recognition, but maybe that could be nothing. But Shimada, he's kind of mulling it over, but he says defense is more difficult than offense, and he says, look, if I'm going to do this, and if we're going to do this, we need to kind of be open to attack from all four sides. So because of where they are, basically they're in a secluded area, and their attacks can come from all around 360 degrees. Yep. So they need to like have enough samurai to cover all of those potential, obviously, blind spots. So he says 7 is what we need. We need 7 samurai. The bandits then try to turn Shimada against the farmers, but he ends up accepting their offer of white rice. Basically, that means that he's accepted their offer to actually help them as well. And then there's a funny scene of Shimada then telling a farmer to hide, because he's trying to like get some samurais, some Ronins coming in, and he's trying to persuade them to join him. So he says, right, go hide behind the door, and when you hear them coming in, try to attack them. So pretty funny scene then of the guy coming from behind the door, and he tries to attack him, but he just gets put on his arse.
The guy who gets put on his arse is a young fella called Katsushiro, who basically, when we first meet Shimada, he rescues this child in a hostage situation, and Katsushiro is a very young, impressionable wannabe samurai. So he literally falls to his knees. He's like, please make me your protege. And Shimada never really says, like, no, fuck off. But he never says yes either. So he kind of is like, all right, let's just see how badly this guy actually wants to be my protege. Stand behind the door with a big log. Best of luck to you. And the first guy puts him flat on his arse. And then when he finds out the job is unpaid, just leaves.
Yeah, so, he's like, nah, fuck that.
Unlucky lads.
So he goes out scouting for more samurais in town. Samurai, I should say, in town. And then he picks one who he instantly knows that Shimada's plan is going to surprise him, but he accepts anyway because he kind of admires Shimada's kind of character, his kind of his way of going about things, whatever. Maybe he just needs a job as well. So his name is Katayama, Gorabe Katayama, and then Farmer Yohei says someone's after stealing some rice from the crops. So Shimada's apprentice then gives them money to help, and they continue their recruitment drive. But then 2 samurai have a mock fight. One guy refuses to join because they use wooden swords. And he says, look, if that was steel, you would have died. So that's not good. Then they have a real fight instead. And he is slain and he dies. So that just, again, heightens the tension. And you're like, right, well, that proves what can happen if you don't get the right person for this job.
Yeah, so that fella who put him in his rest bed was Kyuzo. So I think it's probably worth at this point going through this. Well, not go through all 7 samurai just yet, but basically Shimada, Shimura's character, is very much the tactician, the genius, the leader. Then the first official samurai who they hired, or recruited, I should say, Katayama, he's just a big smiley fella. He just seems like a lovely bloke. Then this fella, Kyuzo, he is literally like a silent assassin, stoic.
He's great.
I reckon if you were to look at all 7 samurai and put him in a room, he comes out alive.
Yeah,
he is like he's just cold as fuck.
He's badass.
And then in the meantime, whilst all that's going on, Katayama, just the all round lovely bloke, finds another guy who's literally such an impressive scene because it's a long take. Is just cutting logs in one chop. Yeah. Like successively in half perfectly, and they just kind of get chatting. And again, he also just seems like a lovely bloke. Hayashida, not much. Doesn't provide an awful lot to the team other than just like he's just an all round positive bloke. And he's a bit of a bigger fella, shall we say. He provides a bit of muscle. In and amongst all this as well, Shimada bumps into an old friend of his from war, Shichiroji. He will be the 5th of the samurai. I'll be honest, bit of a forgettable character.
Yeah,
Of the seven samurai, he's the one. Like we literally had to cut there because I had to try and figure out when they actually met him.
I
He
didn't
is
take
the
a note
most.
of that either. Yeah,
Yeah, he's the most. He is the only, I would say, forgettable samurai. The only thing of note with him really is that he's like Shimada's second in command because they went to war with each other, and also he just loves to slag that villager Manzo who hates samurai. He just takes the piss out of him for the rest of the movie, basically. That's five. Shimada, the leader. Shichiroji, his right hand man, who's a bit forgettable. Kyuzo, who is just stoic and just a John Wick as a samurai, basically.
so great. Yeah,
Just cold as fuck. Katayama, who's just a lovely, lovely bloke. Just seems like an all round nice guy. Hayashida, who likes to cut logs and also seems like a nice bloke. And then, of course, by the end, they finally let the young fella.
Rikichi, yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, Rikichi's the villager. They let
yeah.
they let Katsushiro, the protege. Yeah. He becomes the sixth samurai. He's like the token samurai. He's the learner samurai. And then in amongst this, we find out that a samurai is just like put a stop to this mass brawl in a bar, and that he's on his way. And then they do the whole log thing again, but he actually attacks him and knocks him out cold. And it turns out that it was Kikuchiyo, Shimura's character, who was Mifune's character, who was following the guys earlier. Kikuchiyo is such an amazing character. His arc is incredible. But yeah, at this point in time, he's literally a drunken samurai who... Yeah, I think he wants to prove himself to Shimada for whatever reason. But just a whole lot of self-sabotage going on there. But anyway, this band of seven samurai, or this band of six samurai, and Kikuchiyo, who's just following them drunk, head back to the village with the villagers because now they've recruited them all. It's time for the samurai to get their grand welcome back at the village.
However, it's not quite the grand entrance that they expected because there's no grand reception, there's no grand applause for them.
Not even a hello.
No, the locals don't come out to greet them, which obviously rubs them the wrong way. They have kind of given up their time and all their energy to try and help them, after all. So
unpaid.
Yeah, the village elder says, look, it's because they're afraid that they're doing this, that are not doing this, rather, should I say. But then suddenly we hear a signal from outside. Everyone runs outside in terror, calling for the samurai. So it's funny, as soon as they need their help, they call for help.
Running for them.
However, it was a false alarm. It was none other than Kikuchiyo kind of just acting the fool, just playing, just acting the fool.
He literally just says like, well, you wanted a welcome, there's your welcome.
And he's like, well, that just proves you're hypocrites, because as soon as you needed our help, you came out running, you came out screaming for help. But the others are like, well, at least we have seven. Like, that's what we needed. We needed seven to have at least a chance of staving off these attacks. So Kikuchiyo says he doesn't remember his real name because we had found out that, well, he gave them like a family tree which said that his name was Kikuchiyo. But if that was the case, then he would have been 13 years old, so he's obviously stole it from someone. So we don't actually know his real name. So they say, look, whatever, it fits, we're just going to call you Kikuchiyo because we can't really be arsed to think of anything else for you. But they kind of make fun of him a bit, and Mifune is great in this scene of just kind of like showing it does kind of get to him. He's not the kind of, he doesn't really brush things off. He does take everything to heart.
Yeah. He's not he carries himself as a class clown, but then whenever someone insults him, he's actually a very sensitive character.
Yeah. Yes.
It's worth noting as well that villager Manzo, who hates the samurai, he has a tenuous relationship with his daughter.
Yeah.
He has chopped off all her hair and has told her to pretend to be a boy, because he doesn't want her he doesn't want the samurai to find out that his daughter is in the village, because listen, the way he behaves is unacceptable. But that being said, it's never explained to the audience why or what Manzo has seen samurai do, but he's clearly very much traumatized with his prior experiences with samurai and is taking it out on his daughter, unfortunately for her, because this film is a bit of a mindfuck for poor her. But anyway, the next morning we get to planning. Shimada and Katayama, they plan the defense strategy. Kyuzo, Samurai John Wick, is doing like self-defense classes for everyone. Hayashida, again, he's just kind of motivating people. He's not one of this is the log cutter. He's not the most memorable one. He's not the most forgettable one, but he's just kind of there, smiling. And Kikuchio basically just calls them all a bunch of pussies and singles out Yohei, the villager. And she's like, you are like a particular loser. And for some reason, all the kids in the village are just so enamored by him. Kind of because he is a bit of a... He's a
class clown, like I said.
Yeah, he's a bit of a class clown. So all the kids just follow him around because they think he's funny. And he actually does take a bit of pride in this. But yeah, meanwhile, Katsushiro, the young fella, is just kind of taking in the beauty of the place when he then bumps into Manzo's daughter, Shino. He thinks it's a fella who's trying to basically desert his post, so he chases after her and tackles her to the ground, but then realizes she's a woman, and he's quite appalled with what he's done. But when he realizes she's a woman, obviously he gets off her, and he's like, oh fuck, I'm like really sorry. We'll come back to those two soon. But in the meantime, the lads take serious offense to the fact that when they've all come back for their first meeting, the Seven Samurai, that is, Kikuchio storms in with a bunch of samurai armor.
Yeah.
And they're like, lad, you realize they got that because these farmers have just killed a bunch of samurai.
Yeah.
And then we learn through this scene, again, amazing acting from Mifune and Shimura, in fairness. But Mifune is so good in this scene. Basically, we learn that he was a farmer, and it's pretty much alluded to that samurai killed his whole family.
Yeah.
And as a result of it, he basically wanted to become a samurai so he could avenge his family. And this is a pretty good time for him to be avenging them, is protecting farmers. And yeah, they realize that they've been slagging him the whole time, and the whole family tree thing then makes perfect sense because he's clearly had a very traumatic upbringing, and he storms out sobbing. And yeah, again, great shot of Shimura. Like, we see him running out sobbing, and then Shimura, who plays Shimada, is just in the room, like tears in his eyes. He just realizes, like, oh, there's more to this guy than just a drunken idiot.
So yeah, Katsushiro goes back to the woods, and Kyuzo's gone there too, and he sees Shino with Katsushiro. So he obviously has clocked that these two are getting closer and closer, because Kyuzo has... Well, he sees him bringing her rice, so obviously he's giving up his portion, his feed as well for her. And then Katsushiro, it's Katsushiro.
Yeah.
So then Katsushiro knows that he saw him because he kind of caught him out of the corner of his eye, and he's nervous, so he thinks that he's going to rattle into the whole team. Then Kikuchio then goes on another rant, so he's a very angry guy, this guy, so he's ranting and raving throughout this whole film for various reasons, some more justified than others. But yeah, the next day they go and they're teaching the kids these kind of self-defense classes, and he seems more in good spirits at this point, so he's making them laugh, and he does seem like you said, he seems like just a fun kind of guy for these kids. But yeah, they're drilling them together, and they're just drilling down on the fact they need to be united, kind of show solidarity, show togetherness. They're not going to have a chance otherwise. And Shimada says anyone being selfish from now on will, and he stops, but he seems that he seems like it's going to be talking about violence. And then we get a short, brief intermission.
Yeah, and from there we then realize that the strategy is, after saying about togetherness and everything, the strategy is that they are going to have to flood the entire south of the village so that the bandits can't enter it on horseback, basically just to kind of bottleneck the attack.
Yeah, exactly.
But as a result of that, there's 3 houses that are kind of outliers from that, and the people who live in them are going to have to abandon them because they need to flood that area. Because it's obviously south, it's, downstream. So it's the area that they will be flooding. The people who live in this house take great exception to this, especially an elf fella who lives in a mill, which is one of the 3 houses. And he essentially says that he's not going to move out, and that the people in those 3 houses are going to fight for their own houses instead. They don't need the rest of the village. And yeah, Shimada basically pulls them all back into line. And... then Rikichi, the villager from the beginning who really wanted to get the samurai does a runner because the samurai are all slagging him for not having a wife, because all of a sudden all the women have just kind of appeared from nowhere to do the harvest. And yeah, let's just say Kikuchio's down bad. The next day, we get a really funny scene where Kikuchio's then trying to be the big man in front of all the women, and he hops on the back of a horse and he tries to show off, and you just see him go off in the distance, and he goes behind a barn, and then just the horse comes back, and then you just see Kikuchio chasing after the horse, and it's all done in one shot as well. It's so good.
Yeah, it's really great.
But yeah, absolutely hilarious. Meanwhile, Shino and Katsushiro, the young fella, have run off together, and in running off together, they've actually spotted some bandits on horseback coming towards them. They instead of sounding the alarm, they just like really discreetly tell the samurai, and yeah, Kikuchio and Kyuzo just go up and make fucking light work of them.
Yeah, Kyuzo's such a badass. He's so John Wick is a perfect example, or a perfect like kind of a parallel comparison, whatever you call it. So yeah, Kyuzo just goes and kills a bunch of them, and they take one as captor. So then they learn from this captor there are 40 men, and then they kind of try and come across try and make up a plan of action. So they wonder if they should surprise them that night in their fort in the mountains. So that's what they decide to do. So 3 of them plus Rikichi leave to scout the hiding place of the lads. So we see then a wonderful, sort of beautiful location as they run through the river and the mountains. Properly beautiful. But they look inside the kind of fort then as the bandits are sleeping. Kikuchio says, "Do you know what we should do, lads? We should set this place on fire, because then everyone's going to come running out, and they'll be just easy pickings, basically. Like, they're not going to be prepared for that kind of thing." So that's what they do. Again, a bunch of people run outside. A lot of them get killed. Yeah, who else but Kyuzo just slaying people left and right.
Yeah.
But yeah,
poor Rikichi then spots his missing wife, who had been in there the whole time. But she's mortified, probably because it's an old Japanese thing that, like, out of shame or whatever, what's happened. Instead of like running into his arms, she like howls in terror and runs back into the burning building and essentially commits suicide. Rikichi tries to run in after him, but Hayashida, the woodcutter, he goes in to save him. He pulls him out, and then one of the bandits shoots him dead. We are already down to 6 samurai. Hayashida's gone, and then we cut to his funeral, which they have a mound up at the top of the village, and they put his samurai sword in it. He had also made a flag earlier, and he was slagging Kikuchio because he did 6 circles and then a triangle because he's the odd one out. And whilst everyone's in mourning, Kikuchio runs down to where the samurai are staying, gets the flag, finds the tallest building in the village, and plants it in the roof of the village. And yeah, it's a very emphatic scene, but just, yeah, it's a good way of Kurosawa letting us know that none of the samurai are safe. It's not going to be 7 samurai versus the bandits. There's going to be some casualties in this movie. And as well, Shimada says that the hard times have only just begun. Just then, literally at this funeral, the bandits attack. And they have about 30-something men left, but more importantly, they have 3 muskets. They have 3 guns.
Yeah.
And Kikuchio instantly just kills a bandit. Like, no harm to him. But the family of the fella in the mill say that he still hasn't actually evacuated yet. And they run in after him, bringing their young baby with them, because the elf fella said he plans to die there. But obviously, I don't know if it's his son and his son's wife or whatever, and their baby have gone in to save him. Kikuchio hears this, and then they start opening fire on the village, and Kikuchio just like runs towards the bullets. He doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
And then whenever some of them start landing near him, he's like, "Ooh," and he just kind of skips back over the wall that they've built. But he's so excitable. Again, Mifune plays it so well because he's played like every different kind of samurai. He's been like the stoic samurai in Yojimbo, and then he's been the comedic samurai in Sanjuro. In this, he's just like an absolute head case.
He's just an adrenaline junkie. Like, he just wants.
Yeah. He literally just wants to be in the line of fire.
Yeah, he's so great.
Yeah. After the bandits then do another runner, Kikuchiyo realizes that family have still gone to the mill and the other two outlying houses are burning down. So he makes a beeline for that mill.
So Kikuchiyo then runs off. Shimada's trying to call him back, but obviously Kikuchiyo wants to try and save anyone who's there. A woman faints just right after she gives Kikuchiyo her baby, because she was speared she was speared to death. Kikuchiyo obviously isn't in a great place, so he comes back and he says, this baby is me. This is literally what happened to me as a baby. So again, I love how it slowly peels back the onion of what actually happened to Kikuchiyo. Doesn't like give it all to you in one go, just drip drop throughout the film of what he kind of grew up with and kind of his own circumstances. So yeah, that night then they start to they were licking their wounds. They're kind of obviously a little bit down the dumps. They're already down to 6 men and they're kind of feeling the pinch now. I think the bandits attack them and then a fight breaks out because the bandits have decided not to be on defense anymore. They're gonna fucking try and get them when they're not expecting it. So the bandits do eventually run away after this fight, but they've now attacked from several different directions. And Shimada's like, listen, we have to be prepared. They could come at any time now. So then Katsushiro has a bright idea. He finds a scarecrow and he plants it in the trees, just visible enough to be seen, because he's like, right, they're not going to be able to see from the distance that this isn't a real person. So he quite smart, because they shoot with a musket, but because they've shot it with the musket, they know what direction the bandits are hiding out in now. So pretty smart. Kyuzo managed to use this to his benefit. The badass that he is, he just casually strolls into the woods, kills a couple of bandits, and then strolls off as if it's nothing. And Katsushiro's just like, you're just a magnificent person. Let's just like,
he just fangirls over him like instantly.
He's
so obsessed with him.
Yeah.
And then not long after the next attack, they ambush a load of the bandits who are all on horseback. They just keep cornering them, and then Kikuchiyo heads off alone. He spots two bandits actually getting executed for attempted desertion, which just fills him with pride. And then another funny scene where he then sits beside another bandit and pretends to be one, and he's like, fuck man, these farmers, they're really at it, aren't they? And the bandit's like, yeah man, they're tough, aren't they? And then he just pulls his sword out and your man's like, oh. And then Kikuchiyo kills him. But then he then kind of like Han Solo in that scene, he then just runs back to the village being chased by a mob of bandits. And then when he gets back, he realizes that by abandoning his post, there's been a breach and all hell is breaking loose. We then get like about 20 minutes of just villagers getting killed left, right, and center. Even Yohei, the cowardly little villager, who actually does get a kill, in fairness to him, I believe. But he gets speared. He gets an arrow to the back and he collapses in front of Kikuchiyo. Kikuchiyo's like, no, because he's been slagging him all movie, and he's almost like, I need to tell you I was joking. But he goes over to him, and Yohei's dying words are, I defended my post. Yeah. Oh, that's got to sting Kikuchiyo in the fucking heart. Then we see off screen as well that Katayama, who is just the lovely bloke, he's been shot, he's been musketed off screen, God love him. And they bring him back, and then they go and they have their second samurai funeral. And at this funeral, Manzo catches Shino and Katsushiro together, and all hell breaks loose. He chases her through the village, calling her horrendous names. He tackles her to the ground and assaults her, and Shimada steps in and pulls him off. And the guy's like, you samurai, you're all the same. I knew you'd do this to my daughter or whatever. Shimada's like, which samurai? And he sees that Katsushiro's just got his head down. In silence. He then goes to comfort her, whilst one of the samurai and Rikichi basically tell Manzo to cop the fuck on, man. Like, tomorrow's the big day. Tensions are high. We're probably all going to die tomorrow, so maybe rein it in a bit, man.
Yeah, exactly.
But Manzo, he's not having it. And they realize then, they do the maths, that tomorrow is almost definitely going to be the final battle. The amount of samurai who they've the amount of bandits that they've all killed.
Yeah, Shimada has worked out that there's 13 left, 13 bandits left,
Yeah.
and obviously they're down to 5, I think, as well at this point.
Yeah. And then again, the first thing that Shimada says, this wise, stoic, methodical leader is the first line he gets on the day of the last battle. And he basically just slags Katsushiro for losing his virginity. It's pretty great.
Yeah.
It's like, get him, get him.
It's so great, yeah. He says that last line.
Kind of
puts
puts the villagers' tensions at ease. He's like, you better perform tonight, man, because you're a man now.
So yeah, there's like it's like the calm before the storm, because there's an eerie silence in the air.
Yeah.
Shimada says, right, we're gonna let them in, and then we're just gonna attack from all sides. So he rallies the troops one final time. The bandits arrive on horseback. It's absolutely torrential rain at this point. Like I love how muddy and how filthy this last final battle sequence is.
It really separates it from the other battle scenes as well, because it is like torrential rain.
Yeah, torrential rain. So just proper hard-hitting, brutal violence, proper mayhem, so well directed. I think this, to me, this is the best battle sequence of the entire film, and he said the best to last. Properly immersive, very, very violent. Bandits break into a house and hold the women captive. I was thinking during this whole sequence, by the way, the amount of like people getting chopped off of horses falling to the ground.
The stunt work is incredible.
I really hope the horses weren't harmed. But I'm sure they weren't. I hope they weren't.
I'm not going to lie to you. I think the people were probably more harmed than the horses. Some of the thuds that these lads took falling off the horses. Yeah. I'd be more concerned about the stunt performers than the horses, because the horses kept running. The lads didn't get up.
That's true. Yeah, no, that's properly realistic. Proper realistic.
You can't make a movie like this anymore. Let's just say that.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to. But yeah, one of them's killed with a musket, and then they fall back, except for Kikuchiyo, who is shot.
So just for context, it's Kyuzo who's shot dead with a musket.
Kyuzo, that's it.
And the badass, and his biggest number one fan, Katsushiro, falls to his knees like sobbing, and he's inconsolable. And Kikuchiyo's like, enough of this emotional bullshit. And he literally just charges head on, because there's only one bandit left. Yeah. It's the leader with the musket. And he's the only one left standing, and he's killed Kyuzo. So Kikuchiyo just runs straight for him, gets shot straight in the chest, falls back, just gets the fuck back up. And your man's absolutely terrified that he's gotten back up, and he just puts his sword through him, throws him in the river, and then collapses.
Yeah.
And Kikuchiyo kills the last one, dies face down in a pool.
Valiantly.
Literally, the two most badass samurai die within seconds of each other. And you want to talk about a bittersweet ending? Yeah, it's amazing that Kikuchiyo gets his arc and all, but then we cut to the villagers singing, laughing, and dancing and partying at the harvest. Basically, incredibly bittersweet ending where Shimada is like, the bandits lost, but we lost as well.
Yeah.
Literally, Shino like blanks Katsushiro, her lover for the whole film. They're all singing and laughing and dancing and being merry, whilst the three remaining samurai are literally stood there looking at the graves, being like, "Come on," like a bitter respect for the fallen fellas who've just saved your village. Yeah. But no, literally nothing. It's almost like a perfect book ending with the lack of a welcome. There's a lack of a thank you at the end as well. The farmers literally just ignore them, and Shimada says, "We lost this battle too." And that's the end of the movie. We just see the 4 graves with the 4 swords in it, and the end.
Yeah, it's an amazing, very, very bittersweet ending.
Yeah. So shock horror. I gave Seven Samurai 5 stars. For me, it's one of the best movies ever made. A actual contender for maybe the best movie ever made. It is a monster of a movie. It's just so massive. It looks so amazing. There's so many characters who are worth following. Like, not all 7 samurai are incredible, but like at least 6 of them are like actually interesting characters. Some people, I've seen one criticism I've seen people lay at the film is that the bandits don't get fleshed out enough, but I think that is almost definitely intentional.
Yeah, I don't think you need them.
It's 40 against 7, lads. You don't need any characters. There's 40 of them. They have the advantage. You don't need to flesh them out. It's more about the aura of the fact that there is like almost an army of them. That is they are a collective army. But directed amazingly. Stunt work is amazing. Mifune is so good. Kikuchio is one of my favorite Kurosawa characters, as I've said. And yeah, definitely my favorite of Kurosawa's samurai films. Ran is very good and very similar. And then obviously you have Yojimbo, which inspired Fistful of Dollars, and Sanjuro was another good samurai film of his, which I'd recommend as well. But besides that, yeah, I adore Kurosawa. I think I've seen like 9 or 10 of his films. I plan on seeing way more. Ironically, I think it was during the Midnight Cowboy episode. I was like, yeah, do you know what? We're covering Kurosawa. Great excuse for me to watch way more Kurosawa. But because I really liked Midnight Cowboy, instead I was just like locked in on the new era of Hollywood. So I actually didn't watch any other Kurosawa films in the build up to this. That being said, I tend to do like a Kurosawa binge, so I'll probably end up watching a bunch of Kurosawa films now relatively soon. What about you, Shane? What you make of Seven Samurai? And then we're going to get into each samurai's kill count. Because it may shock you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely love this. It's an amazing film. I think most of the battle sequences are like among the best you'll see in the kind of this genre. The final battle in particular properly blew me away. Just how dirty and how it's obviously torrential rain, but how violent and how pulverizing it is. Like you feel some of those blows. I was probably like fearful for the horses. I'll be honest. I didn't really care about the stunt people. I was like, I just hope the horses weren't killed I weren't torturing this. But no, Mifune is amazing. I think the guy who plays Shimada is very, very good. Kyuzo's such a badass character. I would have loved.
Yeah, he's so cool.
You could just give me a film or a fucking whole film series with that dude, and he's just a one man army. Excuse me. Like I said, during the middle, I think it is takes its time. It's a little bit repetitive, I would say, for me anyway. But like I said, it did probably get me back. I wasn't losing interest or anything, but when I say it got me back, what I mean is I was properly immersed then afterwards. Like it was only a very brief period of time. I think it absolutely justifies its runtime, to be honest. I need to get into more Kurosawa films. Like it's definitely something I need to just get into more of. Love Rashomon, love this. Yeah, so why not?
Yeah, I would say for anyone who's maybe dipped their toe into Kurosawa and they want to go a little further, I would say for me, Ikaru and High and Low and Yojimbo.
Yeah, I want to watch High and Low
are
for sure.
Probably the next. They're probably the three most accessible, and the three most accessible that are like absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
like Sanjuro's a really easy film to watch. It's great crack, but it's it's a spiritual sequel to Yojimbo where Mifune just plays a totally opposite character. It's good crack, but High and Low is an incredible drama, and then Ikaru is. If Seven Samurai isn't my favorite Kurosawa film, then it's Ikaru. Nice. But kill count. Shane, before I say the numbers or anything, if you were to hazard a guess as to proportionately which samurai killed how many bandits, how proportionate do you reckon it is?
Interesting. I would say the top two would be Kyuzo and Kikuchio.
Okay.
I can't remember too many kills that Shimada had, so yeah, he'd probably be down the end for me.
Interesting.
Now, bear in mind, it's been about 3 weeks since I've seen the film, so yeah, it's not fresh in my mind from that point of view.
So you want to talk about people in the group project carrying the work. Katayama, lovely bloke, all-round good guy. 1 kill.
Yeah, I would have said he was down the list, yeah.
Katsushiro, the young fella, the protege.
Yeah.
1 kill.
Yeah, I would have said he'd be up there.
Shichiroji, probably the most forgettable guy. The guy who was at war with Shimada. 3 kills.
I had Shichiroji in my notes at the very end there. I was like, I don't even remember that dude, to be honest with you.
Yeah, literally. Hayashida, who died very early on, 5 kills. Shimada, the leader of the gang, 6 kills.
Okay.
Kyuzo, 8 kills.
Nice.
Kikuchio, 20.
Whoa.
You want to talk about a guy carrying the workload? Kikuchio put in a shift. He killed half of the bandits.
Fair folks, that Kikuchio.
7 on 40 and one guy kills half of them. What a legend. Yeah, props to Kikuchio for getting a group assignment grade despite doing half the work. Good on you. You fucking died in the end as well. God love you. Didn't even get to reap the rewards. But yeah, that is 7 Samurai. And now, Shane, because I need to be conscious as to how I intro this next segment, because it's going to be the intro of an actual video. I reckon we talk about the movies that we have watched recently. Yes, this is a part of the episode on the Golden Hour Film Podcast where we discussed 7 Samurai, but look at this. We've clipped it up and we've made it into a special video. Shane, what have you watched recently?
Okay, so I did a quick rewatch of Matthew Vaughn's Kick-Ass. Don't know why it was on. It was just on. Just watched it. Like
crack.
The film. Yeah, it's good crack. Galaxy Quest is a film I hadn't seen before, and bear in mind I've not seen any Star Trek whatsoever. I just wouldn't know where to start, to be honest. Like, it's not any kind of prejudice I have against the show or anything or the films. I just like, there's so much of it that there's no point in me even getting into it, I feel like, at this point. But I know that this is like a satire on the kind of Star Trek like fandom and also like that kind of world. It's a really fun, it's like an homage to and also a piss take of that kind of show, Star Trek and those kind of sci-fi shows. So it is kind of a love letter to them, but also they're not afraid to like stick the knife in. Basically it's Alan Rickman is so funny in this film. There's this posh English actor who just rues the fact that he ever took this job in this. He's very, very funny. You don't really see too many comedies from that guy, I feel like, but he's very funny in that. Royal Tenenbaums. So I saw a couple of Wes Anderson films because bear in mind I'm so good. I like Royal Tenenbaums. I don't know. I also watched The French Dispatch, which I didn't like. Me and Harry have talked in the past about the fact that I'm just not a Wes guy. I don't know why.
It's fine. Not every director is for everyone.
Yeah, he just doesn't do it. I don't know why. I tried to give him another chance, but like I like Tenenbaums. I kind of like the first half better than the second half, but whatever. It is what it is. Yeah, like I gave it a chance. I like Tenenbaums. Didn't really like French Dispatch. It is what it is. Black Bag is my favourite film of 2025 so far. Steven Soderbergh directed this. He's so economical. I'm so fascinated by his whole filmmaking process for one thing, but then the film itself just absolutely made for me. It's just like smart, funny, a crime caper. It's a spy caper. It's so good. It's like smart kind of James Bond, like in a way that James Bond relies on gadgets and stuff and all this kind of stuff. This is just two people involved, so a married couple. One of them has to investigate the other because they may or may not be a double agent. But then there's this whole whodunit as well. So if it isn't that other person, who could it be? And then there's a final sequence. So obviously, whodunits end with like the suspects all gathered up, and then the investigator, whether it be like Sherlock or whether it be Benoit Blanc or any of these, they all go through each of the motives that each of the suspects would have, and then they finally zero in on the actual perpetrator. It's just, this film could not be made anymore for me. It's like literally like someone went into my brain and just like took my whole sensibilities and just put it on screen. I loved it so much.
Adding it to the watch list.
Really, really good if you get a chance to go to the cinema and see it. Mickey 17 is another one that's on cinemas. Liked it. Definitely not one of my favourite Bong films, but another successful hit of the Bong, I would say. The Graduate. They really like The Graduate. I think we mentioned The Graduate on a recent podcast
Midnight Cowboy episode,
which I hadn't seen at the time, so I wanted to go and check it out because I know Obviously highly thought of. A lot funnier than I thought it would be. I don't know why I didn't think it was
Do
a
you
comedy for some reason.
agree that Paul Simon absolutely shafted the people who made that film?
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%.
Like, what a con artist. Oh, yeah, I'm going to provide the music for this 2 hour Oscar movie. One song.
One song. In
Give them
fairness,
one song. And he
very,
says, fucking play it again. Play it again.
very memorable song, but yeah, it's wildly overplayed. No, I did really like it though.
It becomes such an earworm by the end. You're like,
It
no.
does. Wallace and Gromit. Having not seen a Wallace and Gromit film from any Wallace and Gromit actually since before Christmas, I've never seen kind of all the big stuff. So I watched Wallace and Gromit, Curse at the Were Rabbit. Really good film. Really liked it. Clue, another murder mystery. Which
I've been recommending that to you for like years.
for a long
I
time,
feel.
yeah, because I love a murder mystery. I like that. I didn't love it. Maybe it just feels a bit dated. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of Cluedo anyway. The board game. Don't know why. For the fact that I love murder mysteries, Cluedo never really grabbed me, to be honest. But I did enjoy the film. Yeah, Tim Curry is very, very funny in that film, especially towards the end. Singing in the Rain is an absolutely amazing,
So class.
amazing, musical. Really love it. Gene Kelly, what a guy! Just the tap dancing. I'm not like a tap dancing guy or anything, but the tap dancing in that is so impressive, so fast. I couldn't even. I was pulling a hamstring just watching it, to be honest. Airplane. So I had watched The Naked Gun recently, so I wanted to go back and watch obviously Airplane, which preceded it. Airplane's really, really funny. I mean, quite dated. Like there's some jokes that haven't aged well at all. But there are also
some of the stupider ones are the best ones though. Like I love the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar running gag where he just keeps pretending that he's not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and at one point he's like in full Lakers gear and everything. It's
I was
so
like,
funny.
that's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and then he's like, so I didn't realize. Yeah, at one point he just out of nowhere he's just in the Lakers gear. There's the joke at the start of the film where there's over the tannoys. There's a man and a woman, each kind of arguing over the tannoys, but then you get the whole backstory as well. Like it turns out they actually are in a situation together. It's very, very funny. There's the running gag as well of the main character giving the story of his relationship that's since broken up. He's trying to win back his ex-girlfriend who's a stewardess on the plane, but then he's telling the people sitting beside him different people. And it's such a dark joke, but like there's a very dark joke that just keeps popping up because he's such an idiot that he just like, I'm not going to get into it, like what actually happens, I don't, but yeah, it's very very, very, very funny film, even if it hasn't always aged well. I watched the new Captain America film. It's not that good, to be honest, but that's what it is. AI, artificial intelligence, Spielberg. So actually this is very fascinating because Stanley Kubrick initially conceived of this film, and like a lot of the development you can see in the film is kind of a Kubrick sensibility, but then he died, so Spielberg took it over and he ended up making it. So Spielberg, there's kind of Spielberg's DNA as well when it comes to like the family stuff, and then there's also Kubrick's kind of a futuristic technology kind of state of the universe, all that kind of stuff. So it's it's an interest. Have you seen it before?
No, I actually haven't. No.
It's very interesting. It's based on a short story, but it's a very interesting kind of a mesh of these two obviously iconic auteur styles. I would say it's not as successful as it probably wants to be for me anyway, but it's really, I mean, the last 5 minutes of this film are caught me in the fields, let me tell you. Haley Joel Osment is incredible in this film, one of the best child performances you'll ever see. I loved him in The Sixth Sense anyway, like that's obviously the film that he broke out on, but this is another level entirely what he's actually being asked to do. He's asked to lead a sci-fi blockbuster, like I don't know how old he was at the time, 12, 13 maybe, because he's playing this android, he's playing this this robot. But man, the journey he goes on it's crazy, and he absolutely pulls it off. Fair play to him. And I know this isn't a movie, but I wanted to mention anyway because it's absolutely sensational. If you haven't seen Adolescence on Netflix, go and stop whatever you're doing and watch Adolescence on Netflix. It's the same people who made Boiling Point, the film, the one-shot film, starring Stephen Graham.
Such a good film. Directed
by Philip Barantini. And the best thing about it is, like Boiling Point, the film, the one shot nature of it, the oneer isn't like a gimmick. It's not just a means to show off. It's a way to actually immerse you in. It's the only way to tell the story brilliantly. So all 4 episodes are obviously one take, one complete uncontinuous shot. It's none of this kind of VFX stuff where you slowly stitch shots together. They're genuine one shots. Owen Cooper, again, just talked about Haley Joel Osment. Owen Cooper, first ever piece of acting he's ever done, and he's incredible. It's an unbelievable performance in the central role. And Stephen Graham, in my opinion, is like one of the top 5 actors in the world. I rate that guy so highly. He's absolutely amazing. And just Adolescence, it blew me away. It's such an important kind of story that really needs to be told, and I think it's just everyone kind of needs to watch Adolescence. It's one of those you just have to watch. So that's what I've been watching recently. Harry, what about you?
Well, yeah, similar to that, I watched Nickel Boys, which is a new film, which again, it's not necessarily a gimmick, but the whole film is shot in first person. There's a couple of scenes where it's shot in third person, but the whole film is shot in first person. It did take a little while to get into it, I'll be honest. It did feel a bit video gamey to begin with, and then by the end I was hooked. And you want to talk about a twist ending? Twist ending.
Yeah.
I then, because, as I said, after the Midnight Cowboy episode, I was then just, for more or less the rest of the month, I was just like, I want to get into the new age of Hollywood again. So I watched my first Cassavetes film, which was The Killing of a Chinese Bookie. Really, really good film. Reminded me a lot of After Hours, the Scorsese film.
I love After Hours.
It's so well shot. Such a great character. Ben Gazzara plays the lead character so well. It's very seedy. I feel like when you kind of get into the 70s and late 60s of American film, the seediness is really, it's genuinely, I genuinely find it fascinating, because obviously had you say tried to make this film in 65, not a hope. But then when your man, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, became the president of the FCC in 67 and just basically said, lads, make whatever you want, game changed. I then watched Network for the first time. Again,
so
another essential film in the new age of Hollywood, because there's that one scene in particular that I always think of where she basically says that people have they've gone through Watergate, they've gone through Nam, they've either fucked or killed themselves to death, basically. Like, it's like America's in a weird place right now. They just need gritty realism, which in hindsight is such a clippable scene to then just basically be like, this was cinema at the time, guys. Because Network is fantastic. Sidney Lumet is amazing. I then, for literally no reason at all, diverged and watched 2 comedy films. One very good and one not so good. I watched Robin Hood Men in Tights from Mel Brooks. It's not very funny, guys. I'm not gonna lie, it's not great. Dave Chappelle is in it. It's not quite a laugh a minute, but like it's maybe a laugh every like 5 minutes, if you get me.
Yeah.
But it drags. The only thing that kind of got me back in at any point was that Bob Duncan from Good Luck Charlie plays one of the villagers, and he's like absolutely jacked. But then I watched Hundreds of Beavers, which is
I want to watch that.
so ambitious, and how on earth they pulled this off is beyond me. Like, it's so committed to what it wants to be. It's wild. It's so hard to describe Hundreds of Beavers. The editing, the acting, the directing, like, it's a silent film made in fucking 2024. Like, it's wild. And the humor is, you want to talk about a movie that is a laugh a minute. This so wild. And there was points in the movie where I was like, how are they gonna keep this up for like another hour? Like, how's that even possible? And then it just flips on its head, and then it just flips on its head again, and then like that whole ending, not to spoil it, but just like from how small scale it is to begin with to how like insane it is by the end is just hilarious. Such a great movie. I then watched Easy Rider, which is 5 stars, unbelievable film. You got Jack Nicholson's cameo in this, which is so good. You've got Peter Fonda, son of the legendary Henry Fonda. He is so great in the lead. And then, of course, Dennis Hopper, who directed and acts in it, is so good. I don't know, just like a real, again, you talk about that one scene in Network. Well, you want to talk about a whole movie that basically summarizes what cinema was becoming in the late 60s. Is Easy Rider. Drugs, hippies, just kind of being free, and how people kind of responded to that as well. But very, very memorable ending as well. Again, very, because a lot of the new age of Hollywood stuff was clearly inspired by like the French New Wave.
Yeah.
Incredibly French New Wave ending for this movie. So it's like, wow. It's like you're going, boom, ending. But incredibly memorable. I then watched Death Proof because somehow I hadn't seen Death Proof before.
The amount of feet shots in that film is so funny. I'm sorry, it's so funny.
Hilarious. Hilarious. He was fully in his element there.
Yeah.
I would say few films have actually impacted my playlists more than Death Proof. The music in this is incredible. And such a great film as well, because it's basically a film of two halves. And I just liked it in the second half. Zoe Bell gets her flowers because she's basically 100%. Like Tarantino's stunt woman. So basically, she just gets like half a movie where she just gets to be a badass, and it's like good for you, Zoe Bell, because she seems like good crack. I then watched MASH because I haven't updated it or anything because I'm getting way worse and worse for updating my Letterboxd lists. But I noticed that for my favorite film from every year since like 1930 or whatever list. The only film from the 70s I'd seen was The Aristocats. And I was like, surely there's a better film from The Aristocats from 1970. So I watched MASH. And I would say it is marginally better than The Aristocats.
That's Robert Altman.
It's good. It's Robert Altman. It is a good film. You want to talk about dated? MASH is certainly dated. Some of the humor really lands. Some of the humor is like toe curling. But yeah, I just basically the lads just skiving off is great fun. I'm not gonna lie, like it's like peak Korean War, peak Nam, and you just see Elliot Gould using the helipad of their army base as a tee box, and he's just like hitting golf balls into the. It's great crack. Also, Donald Sutherland is like really good in this movie as well. He's so funny.
Shocker.
I then watched Chaos, The Manson Murders. Bear with me now. It's directed by Errol Morris, who directed The Thin Blue Line, which is one of the most important documentaries in the history of documentary filmmaking. So I went into this with high hopes. And yeah, you see the Netflix logo and you're like, oh, bollocks, what?
That's the thing.
It's the most rinse and repeat documentary. It literally just tells, like, anyone who has so much as watched a 5-minute YouTube video on the Manson murders will come into this documentary and learn literally nothing new. There is no new information here. There's nothing insightful. It doesn't even cover the Manson murders in a particularly interesting... Oh, he was obsessed with the Beatles. Like, we know. Stop harping on about it. Like, then I watched The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes because, and you may not know this, but on Sky Cinema, they have all of the Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes films for free.
Oh, for free? Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to watch
So I have downloaded, I think is there 14 of them? I have them all downloaded now. This is the second one. And yeah, it's good fun. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. What can you say? It's a Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes movie. I was in Mrs. O's drinking a pint of Guinness. I felt as Irish as I could. And then I came home and I was like, wow, I just needed something really simple to watch, actually. The Guinness has gone straight to my head. So I just put on a classic Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes movie, and it just hit the spot. It was like a perfect way to pass the time. I then watched Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, which is so I'm not massive into my westerns, but like I will watch westerns, of course. James Coburn, who is in like so many movies, is so good as Pat Garrett. Oh my god. Basically, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid is the 70s western, which kind of got reevaluated, and people are like, no, this is actually class, because I don't know how well it did at the time, but I just know that the consensus then wasn't quite what it is now. Now everyone's like, yeah, no, this movie's class. It's such a sad, bleak, depressing western. about a guy who's basically hunting down his former outlaw because he's turned to the law. But based on characters you meet and stuff, you actually question if him turning to the law is actually, to use a wrestling term, is actually him turning face, or if he's actually turned heel by going to the law.
Yeah.
Because he's questioning himself the whole time he's hunting down his former brother. But yeah, very bleak ending, very moody, melancholic ending that just really kind of makes the whole. It just is like the. Yeah, sometimes the journey's better than the destination, shall we say. And you want to talk about animal cruelty? Well, this movie, they actually beheaded chickens. So, yeah.
That's not great.
PETA weren't a big fan of this movie, it's safe to say. I then watched Frenzy. And yeah, I think we should cover Frenzy because I know you're not a huge fan of Frenzy. And Frenzy is one of my favorite Hitchcock films I've seen. It is fucking class. I distinctly remember seeing Tarantino saying that he didn't think that Hitchcock is one of the greatest directors of all time, but if 50s Hitchcock was around in the 70s and was got to basically fully commit to the ideas that he wanted to do because of censorship, then maybe he'd be in the discussion. Well, my answer to that, Tarantino, is have you not seen Frenzy? It is literally if 50s Hitchcock got to make a film during the new Hollywood era, unfiltered, unsolicited, unwavering Hitchcock. Listen, the man, I've watched like 30 Hitchcock films prior to this, and I really liked almost all of them. The guy is so good at alluding to stuff, and it's not like Marnie, because I didn't like Marnie. When Hitchcock in this film, instead of having to allude to stuff, he gets to actually show it. He gets to actually show it. He then has to kind of go about it in a certain way where it's still artistic. And I just feel like the editing and the direction of this movie is incredible. There's one scene in particular where a character and another character go into a room, and up until then you hear all the hustle and bustle of the streets and there's music and everything. And then the guy says one line and then it is dead silence. And the shot literally just comes down the stairs in utter silence, and it is genuinely some of the best editing I've ever seen in a Hitchcock film. It literally just hits you in the heart. It is brutal. As well, I like as well that it's an interesting take on the Wrong Man thriller, because Hitchcock's done so fucking many of them. But normally in his Wrong Man thrillers, the guy is like an upstanding citizen who's been like framed by the law. This guy could be a murderer. You just don't know. He could so be a murderer, which makes it a really interesting take on the Hitchcock formula, because it's like this guy's actually like, I wouldn't go, at least to begin with, I wouldn't go as far as to call him deplorable, but he's an arsehole. He's an absolute arsehole.
He is a misogynist. Like, he is someone who doesn't think highly of women. So the fact that he could do this thing is like it's not a stretch of the imagination whatsoever.
Which makes it way more interesting, because normally in a Hitchcock wrong man thriller, you know you're in a wrong man thriller. Where to begin with, you're kind of like, what if he is the murderer? Like, he actually could be. Like, the twist may be that he is the murderer. And last but not least, I watched You Cannot Kill David Arquette, which is the documentary where David Arquette became a wrestler, had a light tube stuck in his throat, and Luke Perry had to rush him to hospital because he nearly died. It's a really good documentary. I was really into it, and the whole period where he goes to Mexico is like really cathartic and nice. I really liked it. And that is You Cannot Kill David Arquette, and that is everything that we have watched recently. And now, back to the podcast, I guess.
Your regular schedule.
My battery is about to go. So, in case I die, not literally, but I'm just going to say a quick goodbye. And then, Shane, if you want to talk about what we're going to cover next week, because I may fade into black right now.
So next week we are covering Andrzej Wajda's Ashes and Diamonds from 1958. So, yeah, we're going to be starting a kind of a European cinema, world cinema kind of arc, because I don't think we've done enough foreign films on the podcast, enough foreign language films.
For real.
So this will be the start of kind of, we'll talk about the other films as and when we get to them, but yeah, this is the start of going to be kind of foreign language films going forward for a little while. So yeah, I think this is something that Martin Scorsese has talked about in the past. Very, very highly rated.
Massively, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you've seen it. I haven't. I wanted to kind of wait until we were trying to cover it on the podcast. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one for sure. So yeah, that's the 50th episode of the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Seven Samurai, directed by the legendary Akira Kurosawa. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.